One. Hey folks, it's Sam here with yet another episode of Heroes of Autism. I'm here with Victoria Ellen, who's going to tell us a bit about herself, and we're going to take it into an interview. All right, Victoria, tell us a bit about yourself.
So my name's Victoria. I run a blog and Instagram, and I am autistic. I was diagnosed 3 years ago at age 25. So I'm an advocate. So what I do is just post things for awareness and acceptance and share my story with everyone.
Very, very cool. So 3 years ago, that's a pretty late diagnosis. How was life before you were diagnosed?
I don't really remember much from my childhood, but I know when I was a teenager, it was hell because everything was changing and high school was awful, and I didn't get any support at all because I didn't have that label. So it was a struggle, definitely.
How did you learn to, I guess, cope with your struggles during that time?
I spent a lot of time, I masked, I developed this like character that eventually I became the character, and I just kind of copied everyone around me. So I copied their social skills and how they acted, and I copied even like the things they were interested in. So I just kind of became like a carbon copy of all my friends, and that was my way of survival, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. And then I guess what changed once you got diagnosed?
I think for me, I got like it's more understanding, like self-understanding and self-acceptance, and I'd felt so different for most of my life. It was just kind of a relief to kind of be able to understand myself way more. And I got diagnosed while I was partway through my university degree, and the amount of support I got suddenly went from like 0 to 10. I got a lot more help in that respect, and that was the main thing I noticed.
Mm-hmm. Can you go into a bit more detail of what that help looked like for those who don't know how England helps people like us?
So I applied for, it was called Disabled Students Allowance, and out of that I got a laptop, I got specialist equipment and software for the laptop, I got a study skills tutor who would sit with me and help me with all my work, and I also got a specialist tutor from the National Autistic Society who would meet with me once a week as well to go through any like worries and things I had. And it also helped my lecturers as well so that they could understand me better, and I'd get extra time in exams and I'd get extra help with my work and things like that. And sometimes if I was struggling with deadlines and things, I was given extra time so that I could kind of process things more, and I'd have more time to kind of work on all my essays and my assignments and things.
Mm-hmm. That's really good, and I think that's really important that a lot of people entering college or, as they could say in England, university, advocating for yourself is so vital. And sometimes getting the autistic label does help that way. But talking to Temple Grant yesterday, if anyone has watched that, she really didn't talk about her autism, like herself as an autistic person, just herself as a woman, as Temple. And so it's led me to rethink the way I do this show. And how did learning a bit more about yourself through the diagnosis help you be more Victoria rather than this masked character?
I think I still mask now, but I was more aware of it. I realized that, okay, I'm autistic. These are the things that I do. This is why I'm masking. And I've learned now to kind of let the mask down a little bit. And having the diagnosis it's just given me clarity on who I am. And I went on this journey and I've discovered that this is what I was like when I was a child. And I'm more like I am as a child now. I stim more freely. I have loads of different interests that when I was in high school weren't really age appropriate and things like that. And now that I've got the label, I'm kind of like thinking to myself, well, this is who I am now, and I'm really proud of that. And it's just giving me a sense of kind of acceptance to kind of be who I am and allow myself to be true to myself.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that's a huge thing for any young autistic people watching this video to understand that just because you get this diagnosis, whether you be in your 20s or 2 or 14 in my case, that there you still this is an opportunity for you still to be Sam or Victoria. That you are not this label, and it's not a get out of jail free card for any kind of wrongdoing. Or I think it is a really a chance to understand you as an individual. And I think a lot of people like us lose sight of that once they get the diagnosis. So how do you not lose sight of Victoria now? Because when you meet people, I'm sure they're like they learn you're autistic, they see the diagnosis and they kind of lose sight of Victoria. And how do you keep people from losing sight of who you actually are?
It's allowing myself to be my authentic self around people and not changing who I am, and kind of teaching them and educating them about exactly what it's like to be autistic, so then they can understand more about me, and that really, really helps.
Mhm. So what kind of stimming do you do, if you don't mind me asking?
I flap
Mm.
sometimes, either when I'm excited or I'm stressed. I spin on things as well. Um, and I play with like stim toys and things. And I chew pens. And when I was younger, I used to chew all the feet off my Barbie dolls. I'd sit there and just chew them. So I like to chew things quite a lot.
Mm. And what does that stimulation do for you? Does it make you less anxious? Does it help you process your thoughts?
It depends on the situation. Like when I was at university and I was doing all my assignments and things, I'd chew on things and that would help me kind of process the information and help me focus. But it also helps when I'm really, really stressed or anxious. I find it calms me down.
Hmm. Now, do you find that for me, I do my stimming like privately because I can't be in the middle of teaching a student how to draw and all of a sudden start stimming. Like as an adult, you have to figure out a time and place to stim, or to make it more subtle, like not so obvious. Have you learned to have like not like hide it, but like kind of like just to do it in a certain way, or make it just more like more natural?
It depends where I am. Sometimes I'll just do it freely and I'm not too bothered about it. But if I'm in work or things, I have things in my pockets that I can play with, so it's not as obvious. Or if I'm flapping, I just kind of don't do it as fast, just kind of slow it down a bit so it doesn't look as obvious in that way, and it's more natural, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah, and I'm not one to hide stimming. I just think it also just it helps people get used to. Oh, this is how I process. Because if
Mhm.
someone comes to like my public speaking, they'll know I do a lot of this, but like that can be distracting when someone's trying to like talk to you. You know, just as like sensory things are hard for us sometimes. Someone waving their hands in your face can be distracting. So what I do is I have a thing called my sensory bag where I have things I stim with or essential oils, things that I can do more subtly. Um, and it's the same thing as like someone using their inhaler or um, taking their medicine, and that's one way I help explain to my coworkers what I'm doing when they do catch me. So what do you do for a living now? You just do your blog, or is there a regular?
At the moment, I'm unemployed because I've just finished my second degree, and I'm looking to do. I'm going back to education, hopefully, in September. So at the moment, I just do my blog and my social media.
What are your degrees in?
They're both psychology degrees.
Mm. Yeah, I went into psychology myself because not so much to get into the field. It's more I want to understand why people are the way they are. Because psychology, for anyone who's not taking a psychology class, is a more scientific way of looking at human behavior, and it helped my social skills tremendously. Why did you go into psychology?
I think I studied it once and I just really, really enjoyed it. There was just something about it. I've always had like an interest in like, because I studied neuroscience as well. I have an interest in brains and how they work and stuff. And it just gave me the opportunity to study something that I loved.
Mhm. Yeah, and another beautiful thing about psychology, it's all about the attention to detail, which I think is a powerful strength of being on the spectrum. Because I see things that when I was a teaching assistant and now an early intervention that other people don't see, like how the autistic people have their own body language. Um, I plan on writing a book at some point on that, like our own language, and um, which leads me to my next question, which is, how do you teach people how the best to communicate with you?
Oh, uh, that's a tough one. I usually just try and explain it to people. Um, I prefer like text and emails and stuff like that. So I try and tell people, like if I first meet them or like at university, I make sure that I just tell them straight off the bat I prefer it like this, so that they are able to communicate with me.
Yeah, I think that's perfect, and sometimes it's not you don't need a complicated answer because usually when I try to teach clients the same thing, they're like they try to make it so complicated. No, just think of like as Temple put it yesterday, simple solutions like oh just okay, just text me, call me. That's the best way. Um, oh crap, I lost train of my thought. So what do you blog about?
Oh, absolutely all sorts. I've looked at traveling, I've looked at university. I've had loads of other people come on my blog as well, and I've done interviews and things. I like to talk about puberty a lot because that is something that I researched last year. So adolescence and high school and stuff like that. But I look at everything really.
Well, tell us a bit about puberty and autism. 'Cause that's in America, we're still a bit squeamish about the idea that people on the spectrum actually go through puberty, and a lot of educators don't even like venture there. So a lot of us are kind of left to what we've seen in pornography or in the movies, and like not really given a clear perception of what puberty is and what our bodies are going through. Um, can you go into a bit about what you talk about there?
Um, what I did was I interviewed autistic women and I was looking at the physical development and the changes that they went through, and the kind of the sensory issues. That was the main thing that came out of it. All the different sensory issues that are heightened when you go through puberty. So things like sanitary products and wearing a bra and shaving and stuff like that. And I also looked at like education systems and how like sex education classes and stuff like that need to be tailored for autistic individuals, which at the moment it's not. And it can be very hard to understand when you're suddenly going through all these changes. And that was pretty much what I looked at. But it was really interesting because it's one of those topics that there's not a lot of research on and people are embarrassed to talk about it, but it really needs to be like spoken about more.
Yeah, what's so? I mean, all teenagers go through puberty, whether it be straight off the bat, 12 or 15, or for autistic people, from what I've seen, it can happen much later, but it still does happen. How is puberty different for an autistic woman compared to a neurotypical woman?
That's the thing. We all go through, they go through the same things. It's very similar. It's mostly like the sensory awareness because you are so aware of these changes that are happening to your body, and you're so aware that the bra is digging in and you don't want to wear it, or the sanitary products smell funny, or they don't fit right. There's loads of different things, and it is that it's just that awareness. You're so aware of everything that is going on, and it can cause a lot of overload.
Mm. Yeah, and one thing I noticed with female students is who are on the spectrum is also like image of like how like about their body, like they would be wearing sizes like three sizes too small, but because that's their hero would be like some pop star. Well, this is her size. I should be able to fit into that bra, and but I don't understand why I can't. Uh, is that something that you found too with other if autistic women that you've talked to, like the whole experience of this is my body and this is the shape it is, like because we're so visual as like why aren't we matching up with what we're seeing?
I didn't necessarily look at that as such, but I know just in general terms, a lot of people kind of said that they dressed a certain way or they acted a certain way to fit in with everyone around them because they knew that if they didn't, they would get bullied for it. And I know myself, when I was going through puberty, my body developed a lot slower than all my friends, and I felt really like awful because of it, because I felt really weird and like I was odd because I didn't look the same as everyone else.
Mm. Yeah, and then that could also, for autistic boys too, they can hit puberty later, and I think there needs to be research on why it seems. I don't know if it's just in autism, but there's a lot like this developmental delay, not just in our minds but our bodies too. That's definitely a topic that needs to be explored more. Um, but how did you find, like, once your body did start to develop? How did you find like the clothes that made you feel like a woman, but then you're met with all these smells and other sensory things? How do you find like, oh, this makes me feel beautiful, this makes me feel sexy? How'd you go about finding that out?
I wasn't too bothered about clothing really. I just wore whatever I wanted. I wasn't too bothered about feeling sexy or feeling like, I don't know, because I liked different music to all my friends and I dressed really differently to all my friends and I really stood out. So that wasn't much of an issue for me. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the truth, folks. It's not about fitting in, it's about, if you want to really find yourself, find what's you're actually comfortable in. Because like I went through a phase that a teenager wearing like tight shirts to show off, you know, 'cause that was back when I actually worked out, like my muscle, and but I was never comfortable because I don't like being constricted like that. So I think it's not just girls that struggle with that, and I think that's great that you were able to find. Oh, I just want to be comfortable rather than constricted, not able to breathe. Um, and so for all the young autistic women out there that might be watching this video, how do you become comfortable as a woman in your experience?
It's just getting to know your body and who you are, and it's being comfortable with yourself and
Hmm.
not putting that pressure on yourself to be like everyone else. It's
Hmm.
just embracing who you are and wearing what you want, um, and having your own interests. It's just kind of having that self-awareness of this is who I am and I'm okay with that.
Hmm. And do you find that once you found that comfort, that like things like dating was easier rather than when you're trying to wear that mask?
Oh, I didn't go on very many dates or anything. And my partner's autistic, so found it easier in that respect. But I was myself. I
Mhm.
wore what I want, and he accepted that straight away. So I didn't have any issues with that really.
Right, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Is, you were comfortable being yourself. Like that's the truth about dating. Because a lot of autistic people that I've talked to, boys and girls, well, how do I know I'm comfortable when it's easy to be yourself around the other person? That's when you know you're comfortable. For my black and white thinkers out there, if you feel constricted, don't wear that outfit or don't try to be that kind of person. For me, I tried to be, when I was younger, James Bond, because he would say a line and the girls would just be like putty in his hands. But then I realized years later when I got more mature, it was his confidence that got the girl, not those horrible lines that wouldn't work if you weren't confident.
That's
Um,
it. And I think if you have to mask around someone you're dating, then that can be really difficult because they don't get to know you and they can't accept you for who you are.
hmm Yeah, and I think that's the huge thing a lot of us missing, because like a lot of us hold on to what we saw as children because we're such visual thinkers, and we have these clear images of like Prince Charming or Laura Croft or whatever your fantasy was as a child. Like you hold on to that, and then when the other person doesn't meet that, you put that mask on. and you don't. But as long as you feel like you're getting the fantasy, you let your guard down. But you should be allowed to allow. You should be able to allow your guard to go down in reality, because you are going to fight with your partner, no matter how amazing they are. And I think I've seen a lot of autistic people break up with each other, or if they're dating someone neurotypical, break up with that person because they didn't meet that fast and getting past that visual. Um, and was that the case for you when you started dating? Like you had this like ideal in your head, like this is the man I'm gonna chase or allow into my life. If they don't meet that, they're like, yeah.
In a way, I had like a type that I did go for. And where I live, there was a there was a lot of like men who fit that brief pretty much. But yeah, but there was no like fantasy or anything. I just liked guys who had longer hair and piercings and tattoos. And my husband, he has a lot. He has a lot of that. So
hmm how are you and your husband able to relate to each other? How did you guys form like that deeper bond? Because for a lot of us, like we can do that surface relationship, like oh we like the same movies, we like the same TV shows, nature, gardening, like same interest. But then there's like forming that deeper bond. Uh, like we're kind of like it's like we're blindsided by that. Because like quick story, like with my wife, she's like, "You say you love me, but you never ask me who, like, where I come from or why I am the way I am." Like that diving deep in it blew my mind. I'm like, "Of course I love you. I know you." And she's like, "No, you don't." So we spent like the first year together, me asking all these, learning to ask these deeper questions I never considered asking. So how did you and your husband learn to connect on a deeper level?
it's really difficult because we don't actually spend a lot of time together. um, but we do have like days where we do connect. We sit and like you say, we ask these questions because a lot of times it's really difficult to communicate, I find. And it's just kind of like you say, asking like, oh well, what's your favorite color? Even something so simple, just to kind of reconnect and
hmm
that kind of thing on like that deeper level. And talking, I find talking about our emotions and how we're feeling and stuff like that really allows us to kind of connect.
hmm Yeah, and I think that's perfect. Like it's starting with the interest, and then it's setting goals to accomplish together. Like, what sort of goals do you and your husband set together in order to bond over uh, being an adult? And like, these are our goals.
We don't really have many goals. The one thing that we want to do together eventually is move out and buy our own house. Because at the moment we live with my parents, and that is one thing that we've wanted to do for such a long time. And we used to we can't afford to move out at the moment, but we used to spend so much time planning like what our house would be like and how we'd decorate it and what we'd buy. And it was just really nice because we were able to just sit and connect with each other and just plan a future. And that was really, really nice.
Mm-hmm. Um, hmm. And how do you guys do conflict resolution? Like, I know a huge thing that happens in a lot of autistic romantic relationships. Like I said, like the first big fight, and then the relationship is over. Like I experienced that a lot. It wasn't to my wife who was just as stubborn as I was, not to just try to work through it rather than end things. How do you and your husband go about solving a conflict? Like, you forgot to take out the garbage again. Damn it, Greg.
We're so different in this respect. I don't like to talk about conflict and problems and things like that, so I'd rather just not bring it up. Whereas my husband feels like he can't move on unless he's spoken about it. So we've had to kind of compromise. I've had to learn that it's better to talk things through, but we normally just sit down and have like a long conversation about things if there is conflict. Um, and a lot of the time, he does snap at me a lot because for example, I'm a very messy person, and he doesn't like mess, and he'll get really like frustrated because I'll leave something where it shouldn't be. But we just try and talk through things as best we can, just
Mm,
so to avoid that conflict.
right, and forming your own systems. For all my Aspies out there, like if you love a routine, make a routine with your partner that you both agree upon. And that's something that the autistic mind can really wrap around. Like, okay, the garbage always goes out on a Tuesday, so every Tuesday. And the other big thing is creating visuals, like to remind you. I have like and reminders in your phone to go off to avoid conflict. So like looking for solutions rather than focus on these problems. So like, what are some ways that help you remember? Okay, my husband's favorite CD that I listened to it today. All right, I have to put it back where you put it. How do you remember to put things back?
I don't. I just leave them lying around, and then he comes in and tells me off.
All right.
But no, for the routine thing that we do use that really helps us, we have a visual timetable in our living room, and it's split in like 3 columns, one for him, one for me, and one for both of us. So we put on there all the things that we've got planned and when things need to be done. And that's really, really helpful because, like you say, it does kind of prevent conflict, and we're able to see what we've both got coming up or what we've got coming up individually, and we can work around that. And it's just like that visual to know exactly what is going on.
Well, that's really great. I may steal that from me and my wife. Because sometimes when I'm scheduling these videos, she's like, "Oh, I thought we are going to the park today." I'm like, "Oh, I totally forgot to tell you. I'm recording a video at that time." I'm gonna definitely steal that. And I think that's the huge key to forming an adult relationship is creating visuals to help the relationship with tools. Whether you both are autistic or one of you is, um, so that your partner knows what's going on with you, and it keeps the communication going. Because I don't know for you, but for me, I often forget to tell my wife things that are important. Like, for example, last night forgot to ask her, did you already eat dinner? So because I wanted to eat more chicken, but I wasn't sure. So I left the chicken out. And she's like, "Why did you leave the chicken out?" Because I assumed you hadn't eaten yet. I ate like 2 hours ago. Oh, like little things like that, and then like creating visuals are so key for people like this. If there are neurotypical people out there, how do I talk to my autistic partner or get them to actually take out things on garbage or pay bills on time? Like it's about creating these systems and routines. It's so important, and it's the way we connect.
I
Um,
think I think as well, my husband, because he looks after all our finances and stuff, he is so organized. He has spreadsheets for every single thing he buys and every single thing I buy. And that really helps because he has them in different colors and for our different bank accounts and everything. And we sit and go through that, but it's such a great visual to have things kind of planned out so you know where you're at with like money or what you're doing during the week and stuff like that.
mhm. Yeah, and that's great. My wife's the one who loves budget, so I guess my wife's similar to your husband in that way. I think the other huge thing about adult relationships is, and you don't have to answer this question, but intimacy. Like a lot of people I've met think that your autistic people don't want intimacy, like physical intimacy, or we don't know how, and often it's very awkward. Like how do you and your husband communicate physical intimacy? Like, hey, hi, honey, how about tonight? Or how'd you guys learn to be physically intimate with each other? Like, what works for you, and what works for him?
I find that really difficult because I find that sort of stuff really uncomfortable.
Hmm.
And my husband is so open about that. So it's just kind of communicating that with each other, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, and for me to not be so embarrassed about it. Um, but I think just being open and honest about it and saying, look, how about it? Just like,
Hmm.
uh, just just communicating, just sitting down and having that chat and just being open. And because otherwise if you don't communicate at all, it can be really frustrating for either one of you. So it's just allowing yourself that time to talk about things like that.
Yeah, I think the other huge thing is for all those people is like um, a lot of like those signals are nonverbal, like with body language. Your partner's signaling you with their body, like um, Yeah, I had ex-girlfriends who would, like, be wearing revealing clothing, and, like, that's them hinting, like, "Hey, Sam." I'd be just like, That's a nice color shirt," like, not hinting at, that. Do you feel like you and your husband need to use your words, or is there, like, one outfit that he wears that you're like, "Oh, I know what he wants," or vice versa?
I think for me, actually using words and talking about it, because I struggle like with visual cues and stuff like that. So I
Mm,
find it so much easier if he just kind of tells me like straight to the point,
mm,
usually.
right. Yeah, and it's about, and that's how you build trust. I think that, like, even if, like, I'm also personally, like, embarrassed about that topic at times, but in just having that conversation, though, it frees it up that, well, my wife, like, told me, like, when I do X, Y, and Z, this is, what I mean by I want to be intimate or not, or I or I want, you to take charge of watching our son. Um, I think that's a huge thing, is like that autistic people are very visual. So if you, like, they tell us where the visual signals are, it's much easier for the next time, not just with sex, but with responsibility, that, well, oh, we'll pick up on that. Um,
Yeah, it definitely becomes easier like the more times like things like that happen because you are able, you think, oh, right, okay, that is why they're doing that. And you pick up on it a lot easier.
mm. And I think that's a huge secret for all my neurotypicals out there, is like, you have to get down to the point with us. Like, if you want us to do something, we're never going to guess what you're thinking. Like phrases like, "You should just know." We'll sit there all day and wonder, what should we just know? Because that could mean, that's too vague and infinite. We need
Yeah.
very specific examples of what you want from us as your partner. Um, and I'm sure that's with you and your husband, as you said. Like, he has to be blunt and just say, "Honey, tonight." Um,
Yeah, straight to the point. Otherwise, I can be like you said, just sit there thinking, God, what did he actually mean? And it'll take me forever, and I'll think about it over and over and over, and then I'll have to ask, like,
mm,
what was going on?
mhm. Yeah, and I think that's one of the beautiful things about dating autistic people, is like, me and my wife got married after only dating for a year, because she only could communicate me with being blunt, like, "Sam, this is what I want, from you. Like, there's no games." And I think autistic people just don't have the time or interest in playing those dating games, that we're just like, these are our interests. Do we get along? Do we click or not? I think that's a beautiful thing. Like, I start telling people, use your autism as your pickup line, rather than be ashamed of it, because that's how I got my wife. And like, I went to straight. This is what I want. I want a family. I want, to live on my own, because I was living on my own, but, like, I was still, like, I had my stuff from college. Like, I hadn't really moved into my apartment. Um, and I think that's like, and that's the huge thing when you're trying to form those deep, meaningful relationships. Like, you have to find the beauty of who you are, and find ways to share it with the other person.
I think as well, like you say, being blunt and laying it all straight out, it adds a bit of predictability. So you know exactly what to expect from the other person and they know what to expect from you.
Right, exactly. But at the same time, your partner will, as they continue to grow, do things that are unpredictable. But you, as autistic or not, have to ask, why did you do that?
Yeah.
And then they have to be able to say, I did this because, oh, so next time you do that behavior, I'll know why you did what you did. And I think that's, definitely beautiful. It sounds like you and your husband definitely have worked out how to be honest with each other, and a system in place. That's definitely a huge strength I can see in your guys' relationship. Um, and the other huge thing for autistic couples out there is, how do you help your, like, husband when he's fixated on something, like, get unfixed, or yourself? How do you help each other get, like, you're obsessing over, okay, he said that 5 hours ago. What did he mean? Or he did this behavior 5 hours ago, or I didn't get to complete this thing 5 hours ago, and I'm still fixated on it.
I just for me, I just try and talk to him about it. If it's bothering me that much, just ask because otherwise I'll be fixated on it for so long. Whereas with him, he'll know if something's up. So again, I think he'll just come and ask me, because then we can just sit and talk about it, and then I'll be like, oh yeah, I get it now, rather
Mhm.
than just kind of sitting there doing nothing about it, getting worked up. It's just, then you can recognize it again for next time.
So you're saying that your husband like knows when you're fixating.
Yeah, he can tell by the look on my face. He'll say to me like, what's up, or what's going on, or he can just pick up on it now, which is really, really useful for me, because sometimes I don't necessarily have to say anything. So
Or you're not even aware that you're fixating. Like sometimes when I'm in that state, I'm not even aware of it. And my wife will like notice because in another video I talk about where my hands are on on my body, and she can tell when Sam's really playing with his face, he's fixating. And I think, and that's a huge thing that people got to learn, that we do have our own body language, and body language is really key to any relationship. Um, but I would say like we have to. I think it'd be really cool if like one of us blogged about autistic body language. It's something I'm really huge about, um, and I think we have our own unique way of communicating with our bodies. Like, what are some ways that you communicate with your body? Well, non-verbally. I mean,
um it's mostly like how I sit and stuff.
hmm
If I'm stressed, I kind of have like my arms crossed or my legs crossed and things like that. Whereas when I'm more relaxed, I'm just more open. And you can really, it's hard to explain. You can just really see the difference.
hmm No, I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think that's definitely another field to be open, and that's probably a topic for another day. Um, so, how would you like the world to see autism in a different way, in a more positive way? Like, if you could change one thing about how the world sees people like you or me, what would that be and why?
That's a really hard question. I'd want people to kind of not see us as a stereotype, I'd say, because a lot of people think of autism and they just have this one image in their head,
Mm,
and that's not representative, and we're all diverse, and it's just like kind of realizing that everyone is so different, we don't all fit into this one box.
mhm.
So
Yeah, and like talk about like being fixated. People are definitely fixated on that one image. Where we have actually, I think autistic people have a huge tolerance for difference. I think that's another thing that's not talked about. Like people think we're so regimented, but we actually can tolerate other people's differences so much more. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about people like you or me that needs to be talked about, is our compassion for those who are different, which actually is
mhm.
everybody, because everyone's effing different.
Yeah,
Um, and I can see that you have compassion for difference, and that's how we show empathy, our compassion for those who are different,
yeah,
like ourselves and others, our spouses, our friends, our neighbors. And there's just so much beauty to being on the spectrum, and it sounds like you and your husband are a perfect example of that. You've learned to communicate with each other, uh, definitely helping end that stigma about autism that we don't know how to communicate. No, we have our own way of doing it. Just like we're speaking English, some people speak through Spanish or French or whatever. Like autistic people too, we have our own way of communicating with the world and each other. And so, guys, check out Victoria's blog. What's your blog called for those who do not know?
it's just called Actually Aspling.
All right. How else can people find you if they want to learn more about the awesome things that you do?
The best place to look is on my Instagram, which is again actually Aspling, and all my links are on there.
All right, awesome. Victoria, thank you so much for coming on Heroes of Autism. All right, folks, this is Sam Hebert signing off.